everyone, Kevin here once again with my 1, 2, 3 cents, and today I'm going to talk about the battle of the sexes, intergender wrestling. This will supplement or go along with a blog post that I made over at my123cents.blogspot.com, so I invite you to check that out as well. And this actually spawned, or I got the idea for this after a recent conversation on From the Rafters Radio, and if you haven't checked out From the Rafters Radio, I invite you to do that. It's every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you can check it out at aapwrestling.com or my123cents.com. Click on the link. You can listen live, or later in the evening the show will be put onto the internet and you can listen to it at any time. So it's a lot of fun. And one of the topics that we got onto a couple weeks ago was guys versus girls when it comes to getting into the ring, and whether or not that's a good or bad thing. And a lot of this discussion is going to focus on what I saw at Chikara over the weekend in Chicago Ridge and as well as in Lafayette, Indiana. And in particular with Sarah Del Rey, who is the Queen of Wrestling. And if you've never seen Sarah Del Rey in action, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and check her out. Or, also buy a Chikara DVD. And I know that, and I am a Chikara novice. I don't know a whole lot about the company, so I'm sure that she has wrestled for other groups as well. But she really impressed me, and there weren't these were not women versus women or a woman versus woman type of contest. She was in there against guys, and she held her own. She wrestled El Generico in the main event at Hot Off the Griddle in Chicago Ridge on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, and it was an amazing contest. And it was, at first it took me a minute or two to kind of get acclimated to the fact that this was a man versus a woman, but then after a few minutes you got into the action and there was no gender bias going on at all. You weren't thinking, God, that's a guy hitting a woman, or vice versa. It was two athletes, two competitors in there putting their best show on, and I was really impressed. And that match should be used as a standard or an example setter of how a man and woman should be in the ring with one another, and why it's not a bad idea. Now, I know that Del Rey probably has a ton of other matches that I've not seen and I've neglected to mention here, but to me that match with Generico really kind of set the standard, in my opinion, for these types of matchups. Now, the next night she did face a member of the Batiri, and I think I'm saying that right, and if I'm not, I apologize. And that was a heel versus face, or a Technico versus Rudo for Chikara standards, whereas Generico versus Del Rey was more of a Technico versus Technico. And Generico didn't take any low blows or play any low, any dirty games, if you will. And it was an above-the-board kind of match. Now, the match on Sunday was a little more aggressive because, of course, it was the Technico in there versus the Rudo. And he was more aggressive with Sarah Del Rey, but she gave it right back. And she ended up losing that match. She beat Generico on Saturday night, which was pretty cool. She lost the match Sunday, but, she held her own in there. And obviously, this is not the first time we've seen intergender wrestling. Andy Kaufman kind of popularized it back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, wrestling women during his comedy shows and then inviting them in the Mid-South area to do it. And that, of course, led to the whole Jerry Lawler thing. And if you want the whole backstory on that, look it up online. But he kind of popularized it, and then they kind of got away from it. And I don't know that the WWE really started doing it until Chyna was around, and that was in 1999 when she wrestled Jeff Jarrett, and she wrestled Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental title. And, I thought that was Chyna kind of broke ground. Although before Chyna even did that, though, and I had forgotten about this until I started doing a little bit of research, I knew that Jacqueline had wrestled men before going to the WWE. She had done it as Miss Texas in USWA, and, broke some new ground there as well. And actually held, I think in Texas, she might have held a couple of championships as well. I know in WWE she beat Chavo Classic for the Cruiserweight title. I know she had a reign as Cruiserweight champion. Chyna, of course, as the Intercontinental Champion. As far as I know, those are the only two females in the mainstream, in the big leagues, if you will, to hold a so-called men's championship belt. Beth Phoenix, of course, is another one of those women that I think could certainly do it. She has competed in the Royal Rumble, and this year Karma did it as well. Went in there with Dolph Ziggler, went toe-to-toe with him, gave him the implant buster, and eventually was eliminated by Dolph, but held her own as well. And there are women on the roster that I feel like can hold their own in the ring with the guys. Of course, Beth Phoenix, Natalya, Karma, Tamina Snuka definitely come to mind immediately. And it depends on who you're pairing them up against as well. You know, because do you stereotype with the size factor? Because at the end of the day, these are all athletes, and they're all great athletes for the most part, and they are in there putting on a show. But, you know, we know it's a predetermined outcome, but the conditioning and the work, the physicality that goes into that is real. And so, you know, do you really want to have Kelly in there against the Big Show or AJ versus Kane? Well, of course not. But a more realistic match might be something like Karma versus Dolph Ziggler or a Beth Phoenix versus CM Punk. And I think we're heading in that direction. I mean, I definitely think that Sarah Del Rey and Chyna and Miss Texas Jacqueline kind of broke ground and are paving the way for these types of matches. And, you know, I mentioned on Facebook that I want to make these vlogs and the blogs a little more interactive. So just want to give a quick shout out to Adam Testa, who is the wrestling journalist and one of my partners over there at From the Raptors Radio. He says, anyone who can watch the main event of Chikara's Hot Off the Griddle and not see viability in intergender wrestling needs to take off their self-installed blinders and accept good wrestling as good wrestling regardless of gender. Totally agree with that, Adam. And, you know, I'll admit it, before I wasn't totally 100% on board with that concept, but I am, not only just after seeing the matches with Chikara over the weekend, but just kind of being exposed to different independent wrestling. It's, you know, it's wrestling and it's good wrestling. Also, Drew Robbins, who was on the Chikara trip as well, he had quite a big statement, but let's just say that part of his was the biological differences between men and women are very minor, but society has cultivated mostly men to pursue professional wrestling as a career. The women who do pursue it actively, like Sarah Del Rey and many of the Japanese wrestlers showcased by Chikara, are just as talented and capable as their male counterparts. So I totally agree with that statement as well. Want to know what you think? Should men and women be in there wrestling each other? Will we see a woman hold the WWE or the World Heavyweight or the TNA Championship belt at some point? Could Beth Phoenix one day be the WWE Champion or Karma as the World Heavyweight Champion? Want to know what you think? Weigh in here, and don't forget to subscribe to my 123 Cents.